Well, we want to welcome you to a final episode for now of Curiosity, Not Judgment. Welcome in. My name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
So we have been teasing the fact that we were going to go up through episode 150, which is today, and then take a break to do some writing. But we thought we'd do kind of a look back, talk about the last, what has it been, like 2.5 years, something like that, right?
Something like that.
Of podcasts, and maybe talk about some of the highs and the lows and what comes next. So I might start asking the question, is there anything that
Please.
stands out from the last 149 episodes that just continues to rattle around in your brain?
I guess a couple things. One is, as I look over the arch of what we've talked about, a lot of it has been about relationships. A lot of it has been about, what's working and what's not working, and asking those curious questions. We all have things in our lives that are going very well, things in our lives that are not going well, relationships that are going well, that are not going well, etc. And I think what we've said is, instead of getting frustrating, instead of judging ourselves or others or the situation, maybe practicing some acceptance and asking curious questions about how we might improve that situation if it's important for us to improve it. So what are the underlying motivations, etc. And I think, the remaining questions are, what questions are left? What is it left to do? Is there a way that we could solidify, document a process or a way of being that helps be more curious, less judgmental, and more on a path for growth, or a stance for growth, or a position to be able to enable growth? I think that I'm convinced at my late age here that I don't want to just stop growing.
Right.
So what can we do in order to not stop growing and to continuously improve our lives and those around us?
Yeah. I had a phone call not even an hour and a half ago with somebody who was inviting me to kind of like a personal vision casting night where a facilitator takes you through a process of journaling or doing a vision board and focusing on the things that you want to develop in yourself. And then she said, this woman I was talking to said, my mom also got invited. And I was really excited because at 84, she's not done. And
Right.
There's still things that she needs to plan. She says, and did you know she just got nominated to be a woman of influence with this particular group? And
Wow.
it just made me pause and it made me smile, because I think that's absolutely right. And that's the posture to have, that whether you're 20 or 40 or 60 or 80, there's still something left for you to do. And it's not just to rest on your laurels or to take the posture of like, well, I put on all my hard work, now I get to relax. But there's always so much more that we can contribute to our immediate circle, our community, our loved ones. And as long as you have breath, I think there's something left to do.
Yeah, I've been speaking to a couple of people lately. I'm at that age now where some of my friends are retiring from various places, and and that's fascinating to me. I don't understand the whole retirement thing. I've been thinking about, what do I want to accomplish with the kind of second half of my life, et cetera, et cetera. Jim Collins was with, I think it was Peter Drucker, one of the most prolific writers of business books and theories and all kinds of things. He came up with the whole quality thing. He was first rejected in the United States, went over to Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Famously helped them with all of that, and then came back to the States when all of a sudden people wanted him back. Anyway, he was looking at his bookshelf. He had a bookshelf of all the books that he had written, Peter Drucker did. And he says, wait a minute, didn't you just write this one a few years ago? And Peter says, yeah. He goes, well, so wait a minute, what age were you on these books? And he says, well, I was about, anyway, bottom line, it turns out that after age 65 was 3/4 of the books that he had written.
Oh, interesting.
He had written just a couple of books before then, and then boom, 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 boom. So talk about somebody who had a lot of stuff to give. I mean, it was pretty interesting. My wife and I were trying to watch some more heady things if we're going to sit down and watch an hour of television at night, and instead of some comedy show or something. We watched a movie called Freud's Last Session, and it's about C.S. Lewis, and there was some amazing contemporary minds during this time. But C.S. Lewis, who, by the way, was in a book writing club with J.R.R. Tolkien. Anyway, I didn't know that. C.S. Lewis comes to talk to Freud 3 weeks before Freud dies. So it's called Freud's Last Session.
Interesting.
It was, and they had some very heady conversations.
I can imagine.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and I was thinking, to be able to think like that, even towards the end of my life, and to have thoughtful conversations that advance kind of the theory of mankind, so to speak, that's pretty cool.
So planning for the 65 plus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a choice.
Sure,
that's where I'm at.
I'm a few years behind you, but yeah, two-thirds of your productivity about to come up here.
So this is the thing. I mean, if I choose to do it, it will happen.
Yeah, that's right. So you posed the phrase, what questions are there left to ask?
Right.
So for you, I mean, I think it is going to be very individual, right? You have gotten to the age of 65 where a lot of people are retiring and choosing to exit the professional space. But what questions are there left to ask? And I know that you've got a ton of questions.
I do.
And you want answers to them, and that's likely going to lead you to continue on to serve in a professional path.
I want answers to, that makes it sound like I'm anxious about the answers. I'm not. I feel like it's important to ask questions. It's not important to always get answers, and it's not always, and I think even the answers that you get are good for these 24 hours, and that's it. I mean, sometimes the answer to the same question is totally different depending on what season you're in, right?
That's true.
And so, and it could change from day to day. And so, I still have a lot of questions. I am really happy when some of the answers come through efforts or non-efforts. One of my favorite sayings is stop flapping so hard and ride the thermals. When I was much younger, I used to be at the beach and watch the birds that would just ride these thermals up into the sky without flapping a wing, right? And, there are things that are going on that you can just kind of ride the thermals. You can not force it, so to speak.
Right.
And that's another reason why I think the curious stance is so much better, because you can tap into things that are going on anyway around you. If you judge them, the growth stops. The curiosity stops. The ability even to tap into the energy stops. And so if you're curious, you can tap into that and ride the thermals and be much more productive. Productivity being subjective for each person, by being curious than being judgmental. And I think that's the whole thing about having a lot of questions, is not to try to say, oh, well, everything's unknowable, woe is me, I've got a lot of questions and no answers. No, it's more like, don't stop asking questions.
Yeah. You said a lot in that.
Sorry.
No, it's good. We're at different spaces in our journeys, right? You are considering some major shifts while being a person of influence within the professional space that you occupy. I am, I would say, probably in the thick of my professional life and feeling the most engaged and the most fulfilled that I probably have in my adult years. And yet there are still lots of questions to ask. And it's not a situation of having arrived probably ever, even if you feel really grounded and fulfilled. There are still questions left to ask. And so I think my mind's just buzzing with about a million different ways that we could take this conversation. But in kind of bringing this to a close, a gentle close for now, and I want to emphasize the for now, because who knows what happens, right? Maybe we write this book and we become hot stuff and we are international bestsellers, and then there's a demand for the podcast. I don't know. I'm being very tongue in cheek, but The reason why any of this started in the first place is because I think you and I felt both very passionately that leading with judgment severed relationship, sometimes irreparably. It caused a lot of damage in our workplace environments. It did a lot to disengage us from our community and from service. And so this route of curiosity wasn't just about you and I and our personal endeavors. No. It was about bringing people along for the journey, about having good conversation together, about hopefully equipping all of us to just think about things a little bit deeper and to ponder things in our own spheres of influence, and how a small change in the way that we process, or a small change in the way that we come up with our outlooks, could go such a long way in building trust, in building community. I know we keep using that word over and over and over, but man, I have come to believe probably more than anything else that community is where it's at. And that is the thing that's going to carry you through good times and through bad times, through your work, through your family, through births and deaths. And when you get to the end of your life, you don't want to find yourself alone. You want to be part of a rich community. And so to me, all of this has been about curiosity for the sake of building and enriching community.
Building an enriching community, and I think that's a really good statement. It's one that it's outside of ourselves. It's bigger than ourselves. I think expanding ourselves is so important. I think the more we judge, and the more anger we have, and the more we don't seek to understand but to be understood, the more we kind of constrict and make ourselves small. Mm-hmm. And so I love the way you're saying community, because I think that's how you grow yourself. And, wouldn't it be great if we had each one of us in our own communities, the intersection of which built other communities, and then built a society that was more curious than judgmental, and more looking for growth and building and making ourselves large. Not large as in large and in charge, large as in open and diversity of thought, to the point where there's more intersections of people. And, one of my favorite sayings, as you know, is it's hard to hate someone once you get to know them. And the more curious we are, the more we're going to get to know people who are trying to form that sense of community.
Mm-hmm. We have had conversation in times past about algorithms and how the news feed system online really is curating things based on your likes and dislikes. And the more granular it becomes, the more constricted your community becomes, and you become completely surrounded by that sense of groupthink and people that see the world only as you see it. And it may feel powerful for a moment, for a season, because I'm right, everybody thinks the way that I think. But when you're 5 people who, it's boiled down to these 5 people who think the way that you think, becomes your confirmation of worldview, and you don't realize the wake of 500 people that have fallen off in the meantime, instead of kind of enlarging your influence and enlarging your possibility of having connections within a grander community, you've now shrunk that. Mm-hmm. And so there has to be intentionality in seeking out community. There has to be intentionality in seeking out points of connection for that expansion. And I know I've kind of teased around it before, but we want to be connected to other people. And even if it's something as silly as a shared cereal, a shared breakfast cereal, there's something that just, makes you a little bit warmer to that person. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you eat crackling oat bran every morning? Right. Me too. Right. Yeah. Right? Whatever it is, there's just something that gives that point of connection and causes you to look a little bit more favorably upon somebody, even if 99 out of 100 points are disconnection. If we can start somewhere together, it goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think you've said something really important there, and that is we do need to find connection, and we need to find other people who are like us in some areas just to validate, who we are as a person. But then don't stop there,
Right.
and don't then just say constrict yourselves to that. Use that as a basis to find out the other parts of that person that are not like you. In other words, you're never going to find somebody who's completely like yourself, right? There's all two of us are different.
Yeah.
There's no two people the same in the world. So finding those common connections is something that we all seek out. But then go farther than that and find out from that person you have a common connection with what else they think about and what else they do.
Right.
And then from there, other friends, other people. I really like the visual of expanding ourselves versus constricting ourselves and making ourselves small.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if we had an ending thought, I think that's the kind of the key is how do I expand my worldview? How do I expand the people and ideas that I interact with so that life is always an adventure. It's always a fun. It's always a place of wonder.
Yeah, surprise.
And surprise versus a place of boredom and roteness and same thing every day and smallness.
Yeah. And so I think what I'm seeing now is two different paths. And I know that there's a term for this, and it's escaping me at the moment, where you are graphing out your points of connection. So it starts with you and it shows all the people you're connected to and the people they're connected to, and it's kind of the spiderwebby thing. What we're after when we talk about finding points of connection is not to form a group that has all similar points of connection,
Right.
but to form multiple groups with different points of connection. So maybe you've got your group of people that you all eat the same cereal, and maybe you've got a group of people, you guys all eat tuna sandwiches for lunch. And then the other group of people that you like to go line dancing after roast beef dinner. And again, I'm being silly, but when you allow yourself to have those wildly varying points of connection and expand upon the knowledge of the whole person beyond just that point of connection to know, what do you think about the situation that we're in? What line of work are you in? What are you passionate about? How do you serve in our community? Just that richer, deeper, nurturing, questioning relationship to harvest more of a reward in relationship.
Yeah, I forgot you did line dancing. What do you get out of that? I'm kidding. But being curious about that, is exactly the point of it, and expanding those points of connection. I like the way you say that, because that is a good way to expand out and to be connected with others. I find that volunteering is a really good way to do that. Because you're going to be thrown in with other people who, for whatever reason, got interested in volunteering, who generally have much different perspectives than you do. It's one of the reasons why we love, the foreign exchange student program that you and I are both involved in now, because you just get different worldviews. My goodness, you've got someone from Pakistan in your house.
Yeah.
You got someone from England in your house, somebody from Germany in your house, somebody from Mexico, somebody from Korea, all at the same time, and you discuss stuff. It's one of my most fun things, because I'll just bring up topics and say, so what do you think about this? And people are like, and in our country, we don't do that. Or in this country, I wish we could do more. I mean, it's fascinating to see very smart people who have had totally different experiences and what they think about the same subject.
I rewatched the Avatar movie the other day, and this is not
The first one?
I rewatched the second one, actually.
Okay.
This is not so much a endorsement of the movie, but there was something that I really noticed, is that in the Native people group, their greeting is, I see you.
I see you.
I
Yeah,
see
yeah,
you.
yeah.
And I think that is maybe the ultimate underlying message of what we're after when we ask curious questions of one another, to say, I see you.
I see you.
I see your heart. I see what you're saying. I see the things that matter to you. And at the end of it all, isn't that what we want, is to be seen?
Seen and unfortunately heard. And I think we put an overemphasis on that, but I really like the I see you, because it's a validation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
I see you, I validate you as a
Yeah.
person, as somebody that I want to interact with. And then we can start talking,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I guess if you have that foundation, because, the seen and heard is always kind of goes together. If we can get to that base of validation first, well, then the conversation just becomes better.
Mm-hmm. I had some really, really disappointing situations that unfolded at the end of last week where I was super discouraged by actions that some elected officials had taken and really discouraged by some messaging I was hearing from a particular governmental office. And I was very honestly, at the end of the day, Friday, quite hopeless and had some time to reflect over the weekend. And even just thinking right now, if I were to get the opportunity to be one-on-one in a room with these individuals, I think it has to start with the intentionality to see that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I may really disagree with a lot of decisions that were made, but I need to be curious about it to get to the heart of why. Why were these decisions made? Tell me a little bit about what was the thinking behind this, because maybe there was good intention, good motive that I'm not able to see on this side of the equation. And so even if it's somebody with whom we have professional or political disagreement, being intentional to try to get to know them a little bit better, to have them be part of our community, even if it's very loose, a loose part of our community, I think it will pay dividends.
I told you West Wing was one of my favorite shows, and we just finished it after many years of watching. We finally got through the last, I think there were 7 seasons of it. And you could see the difference between when 2 people or a group of people came in and they were opposite sides of the table and there was going to be no compromise, and it was just beat you over the head with my ideas and try to win at all costs through some leverage that I have on you, versus the times it was 2 people just meeting and something would come up. Mm-hmm. And they had a friendship and a respect for each other. And then something would come up that they were totally on different sides on. But then there was a curiosity among them as, wow, how'd you get to that position? Mm-hmm. How'd you get to that position? And you could see the difference, and it was palpable. And it's a TV show, but I'm just saying that happens in real life.
It does.
And can we, if we came into the room and said, I see you, I understand that you're trying for this, and this, and this. Let me see if I can articulate what you're trying to do here, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. Do I have this right? Mm-hmm. And then that might form a much better basis. But anyway, it has to do with the curiosity. What can we do in this room today that could actually be for the people that we're trying to help? We differ on opinions, clearly, as 2 human beings or 2 groups of human beings would. What can we do? What's the curious approach here where, we could come up with something that would be a win for both sides? And, the whole win-win got to be kind of a cliche back in the 80s and 90s in business. But it's still a possibility. Mm-hmm. It's always a possibility.
Yeah. So as we kind of seal this one up, I think maybe I'll give you a second to think about what questions are left to ask, if you have one good one to leave our audience with. I think for me, the question that's left for me to ask is, how do I keep curiosity ever present in my life? How do I have that be a default so that I don't get stuck in judgment in the future?
Yeah, and I would say mine's a corollary to that is, how do I stay curious when I'm stressed? Because that's when I revert back to old ideas or judgments or things like that. So it's more of a specific, same question. I'm just saying, I've noticed in myself that I can generally stay curious and love to stay curious in comfortable situations. But when I'm stressed, when I get defensive, when somebody appears to be pushing my buttons, I get less curious. Mm-hmm. How can I stay curious in those situations?
Yeah, those are some good remaining questions. All right, friends, we're going to close up for now, but I would encourage you to periodically revisit the website, curiositynotjudgment.com. We will do our best to post some updates about where we are in the writing journey. We, of course, are going to invite everybody to participate in the book when that becomes available. and to be determined what we do with this podcast in months and years to come. But there's 150 episodes now for you to go back and review. So we feel like we've left you with a good vault of curious things.
Stay curious, my friends.
Absolutely. And we'll see you down the road.
Take care.